The earliest windows were merely holes cut into walls. People living in warm climates left them uncovered, while people in harsher climates used animal skins to keep the cold out. In the Far East, people covered the opening with paper. Then came glass panes, in sashes that swung in or out or hung one above the other. This type of window is called a casement window. A crank mechanism opens it at an angle. To build the window frame, the factory begins with 5-meter lengths of extruded PVC, a type of plastic. As clamps hold the PVC steady, a computer-guided circular saw cuts the sizes required for the frame. The same machine also cuts the pieces for the sash, the inner frame around the glass. Each frame is made from 4 pieces, whose ends are mitered at a 45-degree angle. Now workers load 8 pieces onto a computer-guided welding machine. 8, because it welds 2 frames at a time. First, a heating block, whose temperature is 230 degrees Celsius, melts the ends. Then the machine pushes them together. They fuse, forming the frame's 4 corners. Here's the same process viewed from above. As the melted ends bond under pressure, excess PVC oozes out at the joints, then hardens. The next machine will clean that up. A robot reads the profile of the specific frame style. Then it uses one of several cutting heads to shave the excess off the corners. From here, the sash and frame go to another area to receive hinges. Meanwhile, workers cut the glass to size. They start with a huge sheet measuring about 2 by 3 meters. It's very heavy, more than 90 kilograms. So they lay it on a specially designed table. A blower sends up air through tiny holes. This floats the glass just above the surface, making it easy to move around. They score the glass using a sharp carbide cutting wheel. This window will have what's called a thermopane, 2 panes of glass with argon gas in between for insulation. One of the panes has a transparent metallic coating to reflect the heat back into the house. They adhere a strip of silicone foam around the perimeter of the first pane, notching it for a good fit around the corners. The foam is covered in a thin, strong polyester film to prevent the gas from leaking through. The strip is a spacer, creating a 1.5 centimeter gap between the 2 panes. That's where the gas will go. They cut a hole at the top of the spacer and another at the bottom. You'll see why shortly. This window features decorative grid work called muntin bars. They're made of aluminum and go between the 2 panes. A worker lays the bars onto the first pane, then uses this guide to line them up perfectly straight. Then she puts the second pane on top. It sticks to the exposed adhesive edge of the spacer. Now the double pane glass goes through a press, whose rollers apply pressure to ensure a strong and thorough bond to the spacer. After the glass exits the press, workers pump in argon gas through that hole at the bottom of the spacer. The speed of the gas flow is critical. If they pump it in too fast, it'll mix with the air in between the panes, rather than push it through the hole at the top of the spacer. After plugging the holes, they coat the spacer in a polyurethane sealant. This makes the thermopane completely airtight. Now it's ready to go in the sash. A piece of PVC called the glazing stop holds it there. They snap it in place using a roller. A little PVC cement to seal off any minuscule gaps in the corners. Then the sash goes into the window frame. Their respective hinge parts simply snap together. The last step is to snap the frame's crank arm onto the sash.
These window blinds come in many styles: roller shades, roll-up shades, pleated shades, and horizontal blinds, to name just a few. The advantage of horizontals is that you can leave the blind drawn and simply tilt the slats to let in tons of light, a bit of light, or no light at all. Most manufacturers make their wood horizontal blinds from basswood. It's a hardwood, so it's durable. It's lightweight, so the blind doesn't end up weighing a ton, and it absorbs wood stain evenly. First, they feed the rough wood through a planer. They cut it down to 5.3 centimeters, the width of the slats. Then, following a laser guideline, they trim off any excess and square the piece using a straight line rip saw. Now the piece goes through a machine that's specially designed to cut thin slats of wood. Its sharp steel blades slice right through, creating up to 15 slats, each 4 millimeters thick. Here's the piece of basswood before slicing and after. The slats now pass under an oscillating sander to prep them for staining. After cutting them to the width of the window, workers spray wood stain on both sides of each slat, then a coat of sealer to lock in the color. Once the sealer dries, they sand the slats manually to prepare them for a final protective coat of lacquer. Next, using a die, they punch 2 slots in each slat, 15 centimeters in from each end. These are for the color-coordinated cords that'll operate the blind. Now for the assembly. They hang ladder-shaped cords called ladder tapes from the blind's head rail, then slide 1 slat onto each rung. Then they thread the blind cord through the slots in the slats, hooking it up to the control mechanisms hidden in the head rail. A cord dangles down the front for raising and lowering the blind. They also mount a wand or cord for tilting the slats. The excess ladder tape is tucked into a bottom rail. To make aluminum blinds, they start with long strips of preformed steel. These will be the blind's head rail and bottom rail. Workers cut them to the required length, which is the width of the window. They make holes in the head rail for the cord lock, the device that locks the blind to the desired height, and the tilter, the mechanism that angles the slats. Now they install those components. The cord lock snaps right into the hole, no hardware required. That's known as a pressure fit. They pressure fit the tilter as well. Next come the tape rolls, through which they run the ladder tapes. They cut the appropriate length and color of blind cord, then thread it through the cord lock. The tilter turns a rod which turns the tape roll, which tilts the ladder tapes, angling the slats. And speaking of slats, they're cut from rolls of 2.5 centimeter wide aluminum. Workers simply feed a roll into the forming machine, then the rest of the process is automated. First, the machine gives the flat metal a semicircular curve. Then it punches cord holes, and then, as you see on the far left of the screen, cuts it into slats. But that's not all. This same machine also assembles the blind, sliding a slat onto each rung of the ladder tapes. All that's left to do by hand is thread the blind cord and install the bottom rail. From this point on, it's just window dressing.